The massive Zephyrian Imperial fleet moved through space like a swarm of metal predators. 237 warships spread across the darkness, their hulls gleaming under the light of distant stars. Each ship was a masterpiece of alien engineering, bristling with weapons that could turn planets to dust. The largest vessels stretched for miles, their curved surfaces covered in gun ports and shield generators. Admiral Vexthal stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominator. His tall reptilian form cast a long shadow across the command deck. Like all Zephyrians, he had dark green scales that caught the light from the control panels. His yellow eyes scanned the tactical displays with satisfaction. This fleet represented the might of the Zephyrian Empire, and he was its master. The bridge crew worked quietly around him. Dozens of officers monitored their stations, tracking enemy movements and fleet positions. The air hummed with the sound of computers and communication. Systems, everything was precise, organized, deadly. This was how a proper military operated. "Admiral," called out Lieutenant Kresh from the sensor station. "We have detected a single vessel at the edge of our scanning range. It appears to be moving toward the Kepler Junction." Vexthal turned his attention to the main display screen. A small dot appeared on the star map, highlighted in red. The computer quickly analyzed the unknown ship and displayed its basic information. What he saw made him laugh. "A human vessel?" he said, his voice filled with amusement. "Just one ship?" "Yes." "Admiral, our computers identify it as a cargo hauler. Basic construction, minimal weapons, standard human design." The other officers on the bridge began to chuckle. Humans were well known throughout the galaxy, but not for their military power. They were traders, explorers, and miners. They flew old ships with simple weapons and weak shields. Most species considered them harmless, if somewhat annoying in their persistence to keep showing up in every corner of space. Vexthal had fought humans before. During the border conflicts near the Outer Rim, their ships were slow and their tactics were predictable. They relied on ancient projectile weapons while civilized species used energy beams and exotic matter. Human technology was at least 200 years behind the galactic standard. "What is the vessel's classification?" he asked. Lieutenant Kresh checked his instruments. "It registers as the Persistence, Admiral, a Terran merchant ship. Mass approximately 50,000 tons. Crew complement unknown, but standard human cargo vessels usually carry between 10 and 20 personnel." 50,000 tons, Vexthal repeated with another laugh. "My flagship weighs 20 million tons. Their entire ship is smaller than our main gun battery." The bridge crew continued their quiet laughter. Commander Zethric, the fleet's tactical officer, stepped forward. His scarred face showed the experience of dozens of battles. "Admiral, should we adjust our course to intercept? The humans might have valuable cargo. Their trade routes often carry rare minerals from the frontier worlds." Vexthal considered this. The Zephyrian fleet was headed to the Kepler Junction, a strategic system that controlled 3 major hyperspace routes. Taking control of that system would give the Empire access to the entire Centauri sector. It was an important mission, one that could not be delayed, but a single human ship? It hardly seemed worth the effort. "What are they carrying?" he asked. Lieutenant Kresh read another scan. "Standard commercial cargo, Admiral. Processed metals, manufactured goods, some organic compounds, nothing particularly valuable." "And their weapons? Basic kinetic projectile systems? Some missile tubes. Energy output suggests minimal shielding." "Admiral, this ship poses no threat to even our smallest escort vessel." Vexthal nodded. This was exactly what he expected from humans. They built their ships like flying storage containers, stuffing them full of goods but forgetting about proper armament. It was no wonder they had never built a real empire. They were too busy trading to learn how to fight. Ignore them, he decided. We have more important matters to attend to. Let the scavengers deal with whatever scraps the humans are hauling. Sir, Commander Zethric said carefully, standard Imperial protocol requires us to challenge any vessel. In contested space, we should at least demand they identify themselves and submit to inspection. Admiral Vexthal waved a clawed hand dismissively. Commander, look at our fleet. Look at their ship. Do you really think we need to waste time with standard protocols? We are 237 warships strong. They are one tiny cargo hauler. Even if they were hostile, which they clearly are not, what could they possibly do to us? The tactical officer bowed his head. Of course, Admiral. You are correct. Besides, Vexthal continued, humans are merchants, not warriors. They will probably run as soon as they detect our fleet. Save us the trouble of dealing with them entirely. The Admiral turned back to the main display, dismissing the human vessel from his thoughts. The Kepler junction was still 6 hours away at current speed. His fleet would arrive, destroy the small defense force, and claim the system for the Empire. It would be another glorious victory for the Zephyrians, but Lieutenant Kresh frowned at his sensor readings. Something was bothering him about the human ship, though he could not quite identify what it was. The vessel's energy signature was strange. Most human ships showed clear patterns from their fusion reactors and life support systems. This one had an unusual distribution of power. Admiral, he said hesitantly, there are some anomalies in the human vessel's scan results. What kind of anomalies? Vexthal asked without turning around. Their hull composition includes some materials that do not match our database of human construction techniques. And there are geometric patterns in their internal structure that seem unusual. Commander Zethric stepped over to examine the readings. Probably just inferior human engineering, he said. Their ships are notorious for having strange designs. They build everything differently from civilized species. Yes, agreed the Admiral. Humans have always been odd in their construction methods. Remember the reports from the Tau Ceti incident? Their ships had organic components mixed with mechanical systems, completely illogical design philosophy. Lieutenant Kresh nodded, but he still felt uneasy. In his 15 years of service, he had scanned thousands of vessels. Ships had patterns, signatures that told experienced sensor operators everything about their construction and capabilities. This human ship felt different somehow. Sir, should I run a deeper scan? We could get more detailed information about their systems. Lieutenant, Admiral Vexthal said with growing irritation, we are the most powerful fleet in this sector. We have enough firepower to level entire worlds. We are on a mission of critical importance to the Empire. And you want me to waste time and resources scanning one pathetic human cargo ship? No, Admiral, I apologize. Focus on our destination. Monitor for enemy fleet movements. Watch for actual threats, not merchant vessels. The lieutenant turned back to his station, but he could not shake his concerns. The human ship continued on its course, seemingly unaware of the massive fleet nearby. Its energy readings remained stable but strange. There was something about those power signatures that nagged at him. Meanwhile, Admiral Vexthal reviewed his battle plans for the Kepler Junction assault. Intelligence reports suggested the system was defended by a small fleet of outdated vessels. Nothing the Zephyrian Imperial fleet could not handle easily. After the quick victory, they would establish a permanent base and begin expanding into the surrounding systems. The Empire was growing stronger every year. They had superior technology, disciplined military forces, and the will to use them. Species like the humans could continue their small trade operations as long as they stayed out of the way of more important matters. Time to Kepler Junction? He asked. 5 hours and 43 minutes, Admiral, reported the navigation officer. Excellent. Signal the fleet to maintain formation. I want everything ready for immediate combat when we arrive. Yes, Admiral. The great fleet continued through space, its engines creating a light show of energy against the darkness. Behind them, almost forgotten, the small human vessel called Persistence followed its own course. To most of the Zephyrian crew, it was just another insignificant speck in the vast ocean of space. But Lieutenant Kresh kept watching his sensors, and the readings kept bothering him. Something about that ship was not what it seemed. He just could not figure out what it was. Hours passed. The fleet drew closer to its destination, and the human vessel grew closer to them. The human vessel Persistence drifted through space like a piece of floating metal. From the outside, it looked exactly like what the Zephyrians expected to see. The hull was old and patched in several places. Paint had worn away from years of travel between star systems. Small cargo pods hung from the sides like metal fruit. Everything about the ship screamed ordinary merchant vessel. Captain Sarah Chun stood on the bridge of her ship, watching the massive alien fleet on her display screens. She was a small woman with short black hair and calm brown eyes. Her uniform was simple and practical, the kind worn by cargo haulers throughout human space. Nothing about her appearance suggested she was anything more than a regular merchant captain, but her crew knew better. The 12 people working around her were not ordinary traders. Each one had been carefully selected for this mission. Each one knew exactly what their ship really was. Distance to the Zephyrian fleet? Chun asked quietly. 400,000 kilometers in closing, replied her tactical officer. Lieutenant Marcus Webb? He was a young man with blonde hair and steady hands. His station looked like a simple navigation console, but it controlled systems that the aliens could not imagine. Any change in their formation? Negative, Captain. They are maintaining course toward Kepler Junction. No signs they consider us a threat. Chun nodded. This was exactly what they had hoped for. The Persistence had been designed to look harmless. Every detail of its construction was meant to fool enemy sensors. The worn paint was carefully applied. The cargo pods contained real trade goods. Even the crew quarters were set up like a normal merchant ship. But underneath the false exterior, the Persistence was something entirely different. Communications? Any signals from the alien fleet? Ensign Lisa Park turned from her station. She was a technical specialist with black hair tied back in a neat ponytail. Nothing directed at us, Captain. They seem to be ignoring us completely. Good. Chun said, continue passive monitoring. I want to know everything about their ships, their weapons, their formation patterns. Already on it, Captain, Park replied. Our sensors are recording everything. Their ships are impressive, but they are broadcasting their tactical data without any encryption. Very confident. Chun allowed herself a small smile. Overconfidence was exactly what they were counting on. The Zephyrians had built the largest fleet in this sector, and they knew it. They had grown used to other species running away or surrendering without a fight. They had forgotten that sometimes the smallest threats were the most dangerous. Chief Engineer Santos, status report on our systems? Chief Petty Officer Carlos Santos looked up from his engineering station. He was an older man with gray hair and hands that knew every bolt and wire in the ship. All systems are green, Captain. The reactor is stable, weapons are charged and ready, defensive systems are online. We are ready for Protocol 7 whenever you give the word. Excellent. How long can we maintain the masquerade? As long as needed, Captain. Our power signature is perfectly normal for a cargo hauler. The aliens will not detect anything unusual unless they come within 50 kilometers and run a full detailed scan. Chun looked at the tactical display again. The Zephyrian fleet was massive and beautiful in its own terrible way. Hundreds of ships moving in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with advanced armor and weapon systems. Any normal merchant captain would be terrified to see such a force, but Chun was not afraid. She had seen the test results from the Prometheus project. She knew what her ship could do. Captain, said Lieutenant Webb, the aliens are adjusting course slightly. They will pass within 200,000 kilometers of our position. Still well outside their detailed scanning range, Santos. Confirmed. They will see exactly what we want them to see. Chin walked to the large viewing window at the front of the bridge. Space stretched out in all directions, filled with distant stars and the growing lights of the alien fleet. It was beautiful and peaceful, but she knew that peace would not last much longer. The Persistence continued its slow journey toward Kepler Junction. To any observer, it looked like a merchant ship trying to reach the trade routes before the military action began. The captain was probably hoping to slip through the system and continue her business elsewhere. It was exactly the kind of behavior the aliens expected from humans on the Zephyrian flagship. Admiral Vexthal was reviewing intelligence reports about the Kepler Junction defenses. The system was protected by an alliance of smaller species, who had banded together for mutual protection. Their combined fleet was maybe 30 ships, all of them older designs with limited firepower. It would be an easy victory. Lieutenant Kresh was still monitoring the human vessel, though he tried to focus on his other duties. The ship's readings continued to bother him. There was something about the power distribution that did not match normal merchant vessel patterns. "Commander," he said to Zethric, "could you look at these readings again?" The tactical officer walked over to the sensor station. "What am I looking for?" "The human ship's internal structure. Look at these geometric patterns. They do not match any human construction technique in our database." Zethric studied the display. The ship's interior showed a complex arrangement of corridors and chambers. Most human vessels had simple, efficient layouts designed to maximize cargo space. This ship had something different. The patterns were more sophisticated, almost artistic. "Probably just unusual architecture," Zethric said. "Humans are known for their strange design choices. Remember, they build ships that look like metal boxes while we create elegant, flowing forms." "Yes, sir. But these patterns look almost like our own construction methods. See these curved corridors, these distributed power nodes? This is not typical human engineering." Commander Zethric frowned. Now that the lieutenant pointed it out, there were similarities to Zephyria's ship design. But that was impossible. Humans did not have access to advanced construction techniques. Their entire civilization was centuries behind galactic standards. "Run a comparison with our ship database," he ordered. "See if there are any matches." "Yes, sir." While Kresh worked at his station, the two fleets continued to approach each other. The distance slowly decreased from hundreds of thousands of kilometers to tens of thousands. Still, the Zephyrians showed no sign of concern about the small human vessel. On the Persistence, Captain Chun received regular updates from her crew. The alien ships were powerful, but they were also predictable. Their formation patterns followed standard Imperial doctrine. Their communication protocols were unencrypted. Their sensor sweeps were routine and shallow. "They are not expecting any real opposition," Webb observed. "Their entire formation is designed for attacking fixed defenses, not for fighting other mobile fleets." "Which makes sense," Chun replied. "Intelligence reports suggest they have not faced serious resistance in over 5 years. Every species in this sector either runs away or surrenders without fighting." "That is about to change," Santos said quietly. Chun nodded. The Prometheus project had been 3 years in development. Humanity's best scientists and engineers had worked together to create something that had never existed before. A ship that looked like a simple cargo hauler but carried the most advanced weapon systems ever built by human hands. The project had been born from necessity. Human space was surrounded by more powerful species. The Zephyrian Empire controlled systems to the north. The hegemony dominated the eastern sectors. Other alien nations claimed territory in every direction. Humanity was trapped in a small bubble of space, constantly under pressure from neighbors who saw them as weak and primitive. But humans had always been good at adapting. While other species focused on building bigger ships and more powerful weapons, human scientists had taken a different approach. They had studied alien technology, learned from every encounter, and slowly developed innovations that no one expected. The result was Protocol 7, a defense strategy based on deception and overwhelming surprise attacks. Ships that looked harmless but carried enough firepower to destroy entire fleets, crews trained to fight against impossible odds. Technology that turned human weaknesses into strengths. "Captain," Park reported, "I am detecting increased activity in the alien fleet's communication systems. They are preparing for something. Probably final preparations for their attack on Kepler Junction," Chun said. "How much longer until they reach the system?" "At current speed, approximately 90 minutes, Chun considered her options. The original plan was to wait until the Zephyrians engaged the defenders at Kepler Junction, then attack while they were distracted. But watching the alien fleet, she realized there might be a better opportunity. The Zephyrians were completely ignoring her ship. They had dismissed the Persistence as unimportant and forgotten about it. This level of contempt was exactly what Protocol 7 had been designed to exploit. Lieutenant Webb, how close will they pass to our position? Current projections show they will come within 150,000 kilometers, Captain. Perfect range for a surprise attack, Santos commented. Chen walked back to her captain's chair and sat down. The moment of decision was approaching. Soon she would have to choose whether to reveal what the Persistence really was. Once she gave the order, there would be no going back. The galaxy would learn that humanity was no longer helpless. All stations, prepare for possible engagement, she ordered. I want everyone ready to implement Protocol 7 on my command. Aye, Captain, came the replies from around the bridge. The Persistence continued its innocent journey through space, looking exactly like what it pretended to be. But inside, the ship, 12 of humanity's finest warriors prepared for a battle that would change everything. In the distance, the Zephyrian fleet approached, confident in their power and certain of their victory. Admiral Vexthal reviewed his battle plans, never imagining that the greatest threat to his fleet was the small, harmless-looking cargo ship that his sensors had already dismissed. The stage was set. The players were in position. And Captain Sarah Chun waited for the perfect moment to show the galaxy what humans could really do when they stopped pretending to be harmless. The distance between the two fleets had closed to 100,000 kilometers. Admiral Vexthal stood on his bridge, watching the tactical display with satisfaction. His fleet moved through space like a wall of death, each ship perfectly positioned for maximum intimidation. Any enemy who saw this formation would know. They faced the unstoppable power of the Zephyrian Empire. The small human cargo ship still appeared on their sensors, but Vexthal had completely forgotten about it. His attention was focused on the approaching Kepler junction and the glory that awaited him there. Another system would fall to Zephyrian might. Another victory would be added to his record. Lieutenant Kresh had finished his detailed comparison of the human ship's internal structure. The results troubled him deeply. The geometric patterns inside the vessel matched advanced construction techniques used by several major galactic powers. But humans were not supposed to have access to such technology. Commander Zethric, he called out, you need to see this. The tactical officer walked over to the sensor station, his expression showing mild annoyance. What is it now, Lieutenant? Sir, the human vessel's internal architecture. I ran it through our entire database. The patterns match construction, methods used by the hegemony, the collective, and even some of our own older designs. Zethric looked at the display screen. The comparison showed clear similarities between the human ship and several advanced alien vessels. The corridors curved in ways that maximized structural strength. The power distribution nodes were placed for optimal efficiency. The overall design showed a level of sophistication that humans simply did not possess. That is impossible, Zethric said slowly. Humans do not have access to advanced construction techniques. Their entire civilization is primitive by galactic standards. Yes, sir, but the evidence is here on our screens. Either this ship was built using technology far beyond normal human capabilities or ... Or what? Lieutenant Kresh hesitated. Or, it is not really a human cargo ship, sir. The two officers stared at each other for a long moment. The idea that the small vessel might be something other than what it appeared was almost unthinkable. But the sensor data did not lie. Should we alert the Admiral? Kresh asked. Before Zethric could answer, a new signal appeared on the communication console. The human ship was attempting to open a channel with the Zephyrian fleet. Admiral, called out the communications officer, we are receiving a transmission from the human vessel. Vexthal turned around with surprise. In his experience, merchant ships usually tried to avoid contact with military fleets. They would change course, increase speed, or simply hope to be ignored. Direct communication was unusual. Put it on the main screen, he ordered. The display flickered and showed the bridge of the human ship. A small woman in a simple uniform appeared on screen. She had calm eyes and a relaxed expression that suggested she was not intimidated by the massive alien fleet. "Greetings, Admiral," she said in accented but clear galactic standard. "I am Captain Sarah Chun of the Terran vessel Persistence. We are currently operating under Terran Defense Protocol 7 and request safe passage through this system." Admiral Vexthal blinked in confusion. He had never heard of Terran Defense Protocol 7. In fact, he was not aware that humans had any military protocols worth mentioning. Their defense forces were small and poorly equipped compared to real galactic powers. "Terran Defense Protocol 7? He repeated, "What is this protocol?" Captain Chen's expression remained perfectly calm. "It is a standard operating procedure for Terran vessels in contested space, Admiral. We request that you allow us to continue on our current course without interference." The Admiral began to laugh. This small human woman was actually making demands of the most powerful fleet in the sector. It was so absurd that he could hardly believe it was happening. "Captain Chun," he said with amusement, "you seem to misunderstand your situation. You are one tiny cargo ship facing 237 warships of the Zephyrian Imperial Fleet. You are in no position to make requests." "I understand our respective fleet sizes, Admiral," Chun replied calmly. "However, Terran Defense Protocol 7 gives us certain rights under galactic law. We are simply asking for safe passage to continue our merchant activities." Vexthal's amusement was turning to irritation. This human woman was either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Either way, she was wasting his time with meaningless bureaucratic nonsense. "Captain, let me explain something to you," he said, his voice growing harder. "There is no galactic law that protects merchant vessels in contested space. There is only strength and weakness. You are weak. We are strong. Therefore, you will do as we command." Several of his bridge officers chuckled at this statement. It was a perfect summary of Zephyrian military philosophy. The strong ruled, the weak obeyed. It was the natural order of the universe, but Captain Chin did not seem impressed by this wisdom. Her expression never changed from polite professionalism. "I see," she said quietly. "And what exactly are your commands, Admiral?" Vexthal smiled, showing his sharp teeth. "Surrender your vessel immediately. Prepare for boarding and inspection. Your crew will be transferred to our labor ships, and your cargo will be claimed as spoils of war. This is standard procedure when dealing with vessels in restricted space." "I am afraid that is not acceptable, Admiral." The human captain's refusal sent a wave of shocked laughter through the Zephyrian bridge. No one spoke to Admiral Vexthal that way. No one refused direct orders from the Imperial fleet. The sheer audacity of this tiny human was almost entertaining. "Not acceptable?" Vexthal repeated. "Captain, I do not think you understand. You have no choice in this matter. You will surrender, or we will take your ship by force." Captain Chun was quiet for a moment, as if considering her options. Finally, she nodded slowly. "Admiral, I want to make sure I understand your position correctly. You are refusing to honor Terran Defense Protocol 7. You are demanding the surrender of a peaceful merchant vessel, and you are threatening to use military force against civilians engaged in lawful trade activities." "That is correct," Vexthal said proudly. "This is how the galaxy works, Captain. The strong take what they want from the weak." "I see." Chun turned to someone off-screen and spoke quietly. "Please make note in our log that the Zephyrian Imperial Fleet has refused diplomatic contact and has threatened violence against a peaceful merchant vessel operating under Protocol 7. "Yes, Admiral, weapons are locking onto target." On the Persistence, Captain Chun watched the Zephyrian fleet adjust its formation. She could see weapon systems powering up and targeting sensors focusing on her ship. The aliens were preparing to attack, just as she had expected. "All stations," she said calmly, "prepare for combat operations. This is not a drill." Her crew moved with practiced efficiency. Each person knew exactly what to do when Protocol 7 was activated. They had trained for this moment for months, running simulation after simulation until every action was automatic. Tactical, what is the enemy's deployment? Chun asked. Lieutenant Webb studied his displays. Standard intimidation formation. Captain, they are treating us like a stationary target. No evasive maneuvers planned, no defensive preparations. Perfect, Chun said. Chief Santos status on our primary systems? All systems are green and ready, Captain. The moment you give the word, we can drop the masquerade and show them what we really are. Chun nodded. The Zephyrians had made their choice. They had refused diplomatic contact and chosen violence over negotiation. Now they would learn why humanity had survived in a galaxy full of more powerful species. Communications, she ordered. Send a final message to the alien fleet. Channel open, Captain. Chun looked directly into the camera, her expression serious but calm. Admiral Vexthal, this is Captain Chun. I want to be perfectly clear about what is about to happen. You have refused safe passage to a peaceful merchant vessel. You have threatened violence against civilians. You have chosen to attack rather than negotiate. She paused for a moment, letting her words sink in. I'm sorry, Admiral, but I am afraid that is not going to work for us. The transmission ended. Captain Chun turned to her tactical officer and spoke the words that would change everything. Lieutenant Webb, initiate Prometheus Protocol. Full spectrum deployment. Aye, Captain. Initiating Prometheus Protocol now. Throughout the ship, systems that had been hidden and disguised suddenly came online. The Persistence began to transform from a harmless cargo hauler into something that the galaxy had never seen before. And Admiral Vexthal was about to learn that sometimes the smallest threats are the most dangerous. The transformation began slowly, almost gently. At first, Admiral Vexthal thought his sensors were malfunctioning. The readings from the human vessel suddenly showed power levels that should have been impossible for such a small ship. The energy output was climbing rapidly, far beyond what any cargo hauler could produce. Lieutenant Kresh, he called out, what is happening to our sensor readings? Sir, I am detecting massive power fluctuations from the human vessel. The energy signature is off the charts? Check your equipment. Run a full diagnostic. Already running, Admiral. All systems are functioning normally. The readings are accurate. On the main display screen, the Persistence looked exactly the same as before. It still appeared to be a simple, worn cargo hauler drifting through space. But the sensor data told a completely different story. The ship was generating more power than some space stations. Then the hull panels began to move. What had looked like ordinary cargo pods and maintenance hatches suddenly slid open with mechanical precision. Sections of the ship's outer hull folded back like flower petals, revealing spaces that should not have existed. The internal volume of the vessel was far larger than the external measurements suggested. Impossible, whispered Commander Zethric. The ship is bigger on the inside than on the outside. Admiral Vexthal stared in shock as more hull sections retracted. Where there had been empty cargo space, weapon systems emerged. But these were not the simple projectile launchers that human ships usually carried. These weapons were sleek, advanced, and completely unlike anything in the Zephyrian database. Sir, Lieutenant Kresh reported, his voice shaking, the human vessel is deploying weapon systems. Multiple turrets, missile pods, and energy projectors. I count at least 40 separate weapon platforms, and more are still extending. 40. Weapons? Vexthal repeated in disbelief. That ship is only 50,000 tons. It cannot possibly mount 40 weapon systems. The readings do not lie, Admiral. And sir, there is something else. The ship's fusion reactor signature has disappeared. What do you mean disappeared? The fusion reactor we detected earlier is no longer showing on sensors. It has been replaced by something else? Something I do not recognize? On the Persistence. Captain Chen watched her ship transform with quiet satisfaction. The months of careful planning and preparation were finally paying off. The Prometheus Protocol was working exactly as designed. Status report, she ordered. All weapon systems are online and ready, Lieutenant Webb reported. Primary and secondary batteries are charged. Defensive screens are deploying. The pocket dimension generator is stable. Pocket dimension generator? Yes, Captain. We are now drawing power from the miniaturized stellar core. Output is at maximum capacity, Chun nodded. The stellar core was humanity's greatest scientific achievement. Using technology reverse-engineered from ancient precursor ruins, human scientists had learned to contain the nuclear fire of a star within a space no larger than a basketball. The process required folding space-time itself, creating a pocket dimension that existed partially outside normal reality. The energy output was incredible. A single stellar core could power an entire city for centuries. But more importantly, for their current situation, it could power weapon systems that made everything else in the galaxy look primitive. Chief Santos, what is our status on the quantum entanglement systems? All QE cannons are synchronized and ready, Captain. We have perfect targeting locks on every ship in the enemy fleet. Excellent. And the hunter-killer drones? Fabrication is complete. We have manufactured 2,000 units and they are ready for deployment. Chun walked to the main viewing window and looked out at the Zephyrian fleet. The alien ships were beautiful in their own way, elegant and deadly, but they had been designed using conventional physics and traditional engineering. They could not compete with technology that bent the rules of reality itself. On the Zephyrian flagship, panic was beginning to spread through the bridge crew. The sensor readings made no sense. The human ship was showing energy outputs that rivaled their own flagship, despite being a fraction of the size. Weapon systems kept appearing from spaces that should have been empty. The vessel was defying every law of physics and engineering. Admiral, Commander Zethric said urgently, we should reconsider our attack. This is not a normal cargo ship. I can see that, Vexthal snapped. But it is still just one vessel against our entire fleet. No matter what tricks they have, they cannot defeat 237 warships. Sir, with respect, we do not know what we are facing. Perhaps we should withdraw and call for reinforcements. The Admiral's pride would not allow such a retreat. The idea that the mighty Zephyrian Imperial fleet would run from a single human ship was unthinkable. His reputation would be destroyed. His career would be over. We attack as planned, he declared. Whatever technology they have, it cannot protect them from the concentrated firepower of our entire fleet. All ships opened fire. The Zephyrian fleet unleashed its fury. Hundreds of energy beams lanced through space toward the Persistence. Plasma bolts, particle streams, and gravitational disruptors converged on the human vessel. It was enough firepower to destroy a small moon, but the weapons never reached their target. A shimmering field appeared around the Persistence, looking like a soap bubble made of starlight. The alien weapons struck the barrier and simply vanished. The energy was absorbed completely, leaving no trace that the attack had ever happened. What happened to our weapons' fire? Vexthal demanded. Unknown, Admiral, Kresh replied, frantically checking his instruments. The energy beams made contact with some kind of defensive field, but they did not explode or deflect. They just disappeared. Disappeared where? Before anyone could answer, the Persistence began to return fire. The quantum entanglement cannons were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of firing projectiles or energy beams, they created direct quantum links between the weapon and the target. Space-time itself became the delivery method. There was no travel time, no chance to dodge or intercept. The weapon effect simply appeared exactly where it was aimed. The first Zephyrian destroyer exploded without warning. One moment it was firing at the human ship, the next moment it was expanding debris. There had been no incoming projectile, no energy beam, no visible attack of any kind. The ship had simply been destroyed by forces that operated outside normal space. How did they do that? Zethric whispered. A second destroyer died, then a third. Each explosion was silent and instantaneous. The human ship had not moved from its position, but Zephyrian vessels were dying at a rate of one every few seconds. Admiral Vexthal watched in horror as his magnificent fleet began to disintegrate. His ships were firing continuously, pouring enough energy into space to power entire worlds. but none of it was having any effect on the human vessel. Meanwhile, his own ships were being destroyed by weapons that seemed to ignore the basic laws of physics. "All ships, evasive maneuvers," he ordered desperately. "Scatter formation, maximum speed." But it made no difference. The quantum weapons did not care about distance or movement. They struck with perfect accuracy regardless of how the Zephyrian ships tried to evade. Cruisers, battleships, and support vessels all died with equal ease. On the Persistence, Lieutenant Webb coordinated the attack with calm efficiency. His targeting systems could track every ship in the enemy fleet simultaneously. The quantum entanglement cannons could engage multiple targets at once, and the pocket dimension power source meant they would never run out of energy. "Drone deployment in 3 seconds, he reported. "Proceed," Captain Chun ordered. The missile tubes opened and released what looked like a small cloud of metallic insects. The hunter-killer drones were each no larger than a person's hand, but they carried the most advanced artificial intelligence ever created by human science. Each drone was capable of independent thought, problem-solving, and tactical adaptation. More importantly, they could replicate themselves. The drone swarm spread through space, approaching the Zephyrian fleet. When they encountered the first enemy ship, they immediately began to reproduce. Each drone carried a miniaturized fabrication unit that could convert raw materials into new drones. The metal hull of the Zephyrian vessels provided excellent raw materials. Within minutes, thousands of drones became tens of thousands. The swarm grew exponentially, feeding on the very ships they were attacking. They cut through armor, disabled weapon systems, and destroyed critical components with surgical precision. Admiral Vexthal watched his fleet die around him. Ships that had taken years to build were being torn apart by tiny machines that seemed to multiply without limit. His weapons were useless against the human vessel. His armor was being consumed by the drone swarm. His entire understanding of warfare had become obsolete in the space of a few minutes. "Sir," Lieutenant Kresh said quietly, "we have lost over 50 ships. Our weapon systems are having no effect. The drone swarm is growing larger every second." "What are your recommendations?" Vexthal asked, his voice hollow. "Immediate retreat, Admiral. We need to withdraw and reassess the situation." "Retreat?" The word tasted like poison in his mouth. "The Imperial fleet does not retreat. Sir, we are facing technology that is centuries ahead of our own. This is not a battle we can win with conventional tactics." Another group of Zephyrian ships exploded as the quantum cannons found their targets. The drone swarm had grown so large that it looked like a metal storm, consuming everything in its path. In less than 5 minutes, the most powerful fleet in the sector had been reduced to helpless prey. Captain Chun stood on her bridge, watching the destruction with no satisfaction, only sadness. She had hoped the Zephyrians would accept safe passage. She had tried to avoid this outcome, but they had chosen violence over diplomacy, and now they were paying the price. "Time remaining until fleet elimination?" she asked. "At current rate of engagement, 4 minutes and 27 seconds, Webb replied. Chun nodded. The battle was almost over. Soon the galaxy would know that humanity was no longer helpless. The age of being dismissed as primitive merchants was ending. But first, she wanted to give Admiral Vexthal one last chance to understand what had happened to his fleet. The Zephyrian Imperial fleet was dying. What had once been 237 proud warships was now scattered wreckage floating through space. Explosions lit up the darkness as ship after ship fell to the human vessel's impossible weapons. The quantum cannons struck with perfect accuracy, ignoring shields and armor as if they did not exist. The drone swarms consumed everything they touched, growing larger with each ship they destroyed. Admiral Vexthal stood frozen on his bridge, watching the destruction of everything he had built. His magnificent fleet, the pride of the Zephyrian Empire, was being torn apart by a single small ship that should not have posed any threat at all. In 8 minutes of combat, he had lost over 100 vessels. His remaining ships were scattered and panicking, their formation completely broken. "Admiral," Commander Zethric called out desperately, "we must order a full retreat. The fleet cannot survive much longer." No, Vexthal said quietly, we cannot retreat. If we run from one human cargo ship, the Empire will never recover from the shame. Every species in the galaxy will know that the mighty Zephyrian fleet fled from a single enemy vessel. Sir, this is not a cargo ship. This is something else entirely, something we do not understand. Vexthal knew his tactical officer was right, but his pride would not allow him to accept it. He had spent his entire career building a reputation as an unstoppable military commander. He had conquered dozens of worlds, defeated countless enemies, and expanded the Empire's borders across half the sector. He could not end his career by running away from humans. Signal all remaining ships, he ordered. Concentrate fire on the human vessel. All weapons, maximum power. If we are going to die, we will die fighting. The surviving Zephyrian ships tried to follow their admiral's orders. They turned their weapons toward the Persistence and fired everything they had. Energy beams, plasma bolts, particle cannons, and gravitational disruptors all struck the human ship's defensive barrier. For a few seconds, the space around the Persistence blazed with enough energy to power entire star systems, but it made no difference. The adaptive shielding absorbed every attack and redirected the energy back toward the attackers. Zephyrian ships found themselves being destroyed by their own weapons. Reflected and amplified by technology they could not comprehend on the Persistence. Captain Chin watched the aliens' final desperate attack with sadness. She had hoped they would surrender once they realized the hopelessness of their situation. Instead, they were choosing to fight to the death rather than admit defeat. Captain, Lieutenant Webb reported, the enemy is concentrating all remaining firepower on our position. Should I increase defensive power? No need, Chun replied. Our shields can handle their entire fleet's output. Continue with systematic elimination of remaining targets. Aye, Captain. Eliminating priority targets now? The quantum cannons continued their deadly work. Each shot destroyed another Zephyrian vessel with surgical precision. The weapons did not cause spectacular explosions or dramatic fires. They simply removed ships from existence, leaving behind expanding clouds of debris where proud warships had been moments before. The drone swarms had grown beyond counting. What had started as a few thousand small machines had become millions, then billions. They moved through space like living metal storms, consuming everything in their path and using the raw materials to create even more drones. Each new generation was slightly improved. Learning from the experiences of the previous models, Admiral Vexthal realized that his flagship was now one of only 12 ships, still functioning. In less than 9 minutes, the human vessel had destroyed 95% of his fleet. The greatest military force in the sector had been reduced to a handful of scattered survivors. Sir, Lieutenant Kresh said, his voice shaking, we are receiving a communication request from the human ship. Vexthal closed his eyes for a moment. He knew what this meant. The human captain wanted to talk before delivering the final blow. It was a chance for surrender, but it was also a chance to understand what had happened to his fleet. Put her on screen, he ordered. Captain Chun appeared on the main display, looking exactly as calm and professional as she had at the beginning of the encounter. Her bridge showed no signs of damage or stress. Her crew worked quietly at their stations as if nothing unusual was happening. Admiral Vexthal, she said politely, I wanted to speak with you before we conclude this engagement. Conclude? Vexthal laughed bitterly. You mean before you finish destroying my fleet? Yes, that is what I mean. Admiral, you have lost 225 ships in 9 minutes and 37 seconds. You have 12 vessels remaining, and they will not survive another minute if this battle continues. Vexthal looked around his bridge. His officers stared at their instruments in shock and disbelief. Everything they thought they knew about warfare had been proven wrong. Everything they believed about human weakness had been shattered. What are you? He asked quietly. I am Captain Sarah Chun of the Terran Defense Force, she replied. And this is the TDF Persistence, prototype vessel of the Prometheus Project. Terran Defense Force? I have never heard of such an organization. That was intentional, Admiral. For the past 3 years, humanity has been developing new defensive technologies in secret. We knew that species like yours would eventually threaten our space. We needed to be ready. Shun's expression became serious. Admiral, you should have accepted safe passage when I offered it. You should have honored diplomatic protocol instead of choosing violence. Your fleet did not have to die today. Our weapons, Vexthal said desperately. Why did our weapons have no effect? Adaptive quantum shielding, Chun explained. The barrier around our ship exists partially outside normal space-time. Your weapons strike our shields in this dimension, but the energy is absorbed and redirected through higher dimensional space. We can reflect your attacks back at you with amplified force or simply dissipate the energy harmlessly. And your weapons, how do they work? Quantum entanglement cannons. We create a direct quantum link between our weapons and your ships. The destructive force is transmitted instantaneously across any distance. There is no projectile to intercept, no energy, beam to deflect. The weapon effect simply appears at the target location. Vexthal struggled to understand what she was telling him. That is impossible. Such technology does not exist. It does now, Chun said simply. Humanity has always been good at learning from others, Admiral. We studied every piece of alien technology we could find. We reverse-engineered precursor artifacts. We developed new theories of physics based on observations of galactic civilization. And we created weapons that could protect our species from threats like your empire. The drones, he whispered. What about the drones? Self-replicating hunter-killer? Units with advanced artificial intelligence. Each drone can think independently, adapt to new situations, and manufacture copies of itself using available materials. They are designed to overwhelm any conventional defense through sheer numbers and continuous evolution. Chun paused, letting the Admiral absorb this information. Your ships provided excellent raw materials for their reproduction, by the way. Zephyrian hull metal is very high quality. The communications officer on Vexthal's bridge suddenly spoke up. Admiral, we are detecting massive hyperspace signatures throughout the system. Multiple fleets are jumping in. On the tactical display, dozens of new contacts appeared. Ships of every conceivable design materialized from hyperspace surrounding the battle area. Vexthal recognized the whole configurations of at least 6 different species, including some that were supposed to be neutral in galactic conflicts. What is happening? He demanded. Captain Sheen smiled for the first time since the battle began. Word travels fast in space, Admiral. News of this engagement has already reached every major power in the sector. They are here to witness the end of Zephyrian expansion. You planned this, Vexthal realized. You wanted other species to see what happened to my fleet. Yes, we did. For too long, humanity has been dismissed as weak and primitive. Species like yours have threatened our worlds, enslaved our people, and treated us as inferior beings. Today, that changes. Shun's expression became cold. Admiral, you made a critical error. You assume that because humans appear weak, we actually are weak. You forgot that sometimes the most dangerous predator is the one that looks harmless. On the sensor displays, Vexthal could see the alien fleets positioning themselves around the battle area. Ships from the Hegemony, the Collective, the Federation, and half a dozen other powers had come to watch. They were recording everything, taking detailed scans of the human vessel and its weapons. They will all know, he said quietly. Every species in the galaxy will learn what you can do. That is the point, Chun replied. Humanity is no longer hiding. We are announcing to the galaxy that we are not victims anymore. Any species that threatens human space will face the same fate as your fleet. She turned to someone off-screen and spoke briefly. When she looked back at Vexthal, her expression was almost sympathetic. Admiral, I am going to offer you something that you did not offer us, a chance to surrender. Order your remaining ships to power down their weapons and prepare to be taken prisoner. Your crews will be treated according to galactic law and eventually return to Zephyrian space. And if I refuse, then you will die with your ships. The choice is yours. Vexthel looked around his bridge one last time. His officers waited for his decision. He could order them to fight to the death, maintaining Zephyrian honor even in defeat. Or he could accept the human offer and save the lives of his remaining crew. "All ships," he said finally, "stand down, power down weapons, and prepare for surrender." "A wise choice, Admiral," Chun said. "Transport ships will arrive shortly to take custody of your crews." "Captain Chun," Vexthel said before she could end the transmission, "what happens now? What does humanity plan to do with this technology?" Chun was quiet for a moment, considering her answer. "We plan to defend ourselves, Admiral. We plan to make sure that no species ever again thinks they can attack human space without consequences. And we plan to take our place as an equal power in galactic civilization. The galaxy will never be the same," he said. "No," Chun agreed. "It will not. Humanity has been underestimated for the last time." The transmission ended, leaving Vexthel alone with the wreckage of his fleet and the knowledge that everything had changed. The small, harmless-looking cargo ship still floated in space nearby, but now he knew it for what it really was. A weapon unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. A message written in fire and quantum energy that humanity would no longer be ignored. Around them, the alien fleets continued to watch and record. Soon, news of this battle would spread to every corner of civilized space. The age of human weakness was over. The age of human strength had begun, and it had all started with a single ship that everyone had chosen to ignore.